Hey, welcome to Spectral Echoes, a collection of Reddit stories as told by people high as a kite. But it's Reddit, who knows, right? If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories. Now, let's get started.
One, old imaginary friend. I know this sounds weird. No, it doesn't. It's weird and terrifying to me. And I'm not even sure if it belongs in this thread. If I hadn't been there, I'd probably just laugh it off and move on like any other creepypasta story on the internet. But no, I swear, everything I'm about to tell is true. It happened a long time ago, and I'm trying to forget it as much as I can. But the memory is still clear. It all started one day in April, when I was about 15. I remember it was cold and damp, with drizzle covering my bedroom window. I was home alone. My mom was away on a business trip, and my dad had been living in another state since their divorce. It was dark downstairs, the only light coming from a small night light in the corner of my desk. The light on the ceiling was in the shape of a rabbit with long ears, sometimes on and sometimes off because my feet blocked it. Depressed and bored, I lay on the table. The computer in front of me emitted a dim blue light. I kept moving the mouse, clicking and clicking unconsciously. Near midnight, I saw a new post. Calling back an old imaginary friend, a simple ritual, no one dares to do it a second time. I remember laughing hysterically and thinking to myself what kind of idiot would believe this. But it turned out, I was that idiot. The reason was very simple. The instructions were so easy that even a child could do it. And I was so free and bored, ready to jump into the most stupid tricks. Just write down the name of your old imaginary friend, put it under your pillow, and read it out loud 3 times before going to sleep. I read it out loud and stopped. I don't know why the name, Nolan, popped into my head right then. You might think it's just a coincidence. But God knows, no. I swear it wasn't because I had just watched Inception a while ago. By the way, it's a great movie. I recommend you watch it instead of trying something stupid like me. Back to the story. I haven't thought about that name in many years. Nolan is a vague memory, associated with my elementary school years in a small town near Quebec. This place is associated with many childhood traumas, family, school, and clearly a child who couldn't control himself. I was quite taciturn at that time, didn't have many friends, no friends. So I created Nolan. He had fair skin, a light blue shirt, and a slim body. I don't remember his face, but that's okay. All I knew was that whenever I was sad, I would tell Nolan. And he would always listen to me, always understand me. That was enough. But since I moved away, I had forgotten about Nolan. Anyway, that night, I wrote his name on a piece of paper from my unfinished notebook, folded it in half, and put it under my pillow. Then I whispered, Nolan, and I slept. I dream. First, I don't dream often. I can't even remember when or what my last dream was. Second, it's not like a normal dream. This dream is too real, to the point that I can't tell if I'm asleep or awake. In the dream, I was standing in the middle of a deserted field covered in white mist. The grass was above my knees. The damp feeling of the night dew and the pungent smell of the grass came to me, making me extremely confused. The moon was dimly high in the sky, but it seemed that its light couldn't reach where I was standing. The wind blew hard, whipping the mist like a silk ribbon, tightening my chest and trachea. There, a few meters away from me, was Nolan. He was tall, wearing a faded, tattered blue shirt, the wind blowing the hem of his shirt up. His face was blurry, eyes and nose unclear, like an erased memory. But I knew it was Nolan. I sensed him somehow, intuitively or subconsciously. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me. A deep, dark, cold gaze that was suffocating. I wanted to run, and actually turned around to run away. But it was like an invisible force was holding me tight, not allowing me to leave. I pressed my lips together, struggling with all my might, and then I woke up, my heart pounding. It was morning. The rain had stopped, but my room was unusually cold. The night light lay on the floor, the computer was still on, emitting a faint light. I remembered turning it off. I told myself it was just a dream. But the next night, the same dream. The foggy field. Nolan. Still no words, still standing there. But this time, I heard a sound, a very soft screech, like fingernails scratching glass. I woke up, and the first thing I did was look out the window. There was nothing but darkness and a light snowfall. But I noticed faint fingerprints on the glass, from outside. I almost screamed. A feeling of terror coursed through my body, my mouth opened, but no sound came out. But very quickly, the fingerprints disappeared as if they had never been there. So quickly that I wondered if what had happened was real or fake, or if I had really woken up. I didn't dare tell my mother or anyone else. You know, she had enough problems. And my friends, I didn't want to be laughed at and called a coward again. However, there is a limit to human endurance. The third time, I was lost in my dreams when I was startled by a whisper close to my ear. "I'm still here." I jumped up. The desk lamp was off. I turned on the ceiling light, checked the room. No one. Nothing. But I knew it was real. It wasn't like the sound in the dream. It had a breath, an echo. I decided to throw the paper under my pillow. But that night, the whisper came again. This time clearer. "Why did you leave me?" I felt strangled. And crazy. Or both at the same time. Immediately, I got up, searched my personal contacts and Facebook accounts. Basically everything I could find about my friends from elementary school. And finally, I contacted Adam, my old friend from second grade. I asked him if he remembered Nolan. I have to explain a little bit, that although I was scared, I was still quite rational at that time. I hoped that Nolan was not a friend I imagined, but really some boy from elementary school. And if I could contact him again, this fear would disappear. I would prove that I was just thinking too much. A desperate attempt, I know, but there was no other way. But Adam laughed, extinguishing all hope in me. "Do you still believe you have a friend named Nolan? You're imagining it. Your mother once took you to the doctor because you kept talking to the invisible shadow. There, have you forgotten?" He chuckled, still rude but not malicious. Then, as if thinking of something, he asked cautiously, "Isn't that why you moved? Why are you suddenly asking this?" I hung up, not having enough spirit and strength to answer. A cold shiver ran down my spine. That evening, I rummaged through the old books in the attic, trying to find any details or memories of that day. And most of all, why had I forgotten about Nolan? Was it just because I was an adult? I thought, if I could answer this question, I would no longer be haunted by it. But I found nothing useful, except a small notebook with a peeling cover. When I opened it, the first page read in a childish handwriting, "Don't call again." I recognized it as my handwriting as a child. I was sure of it because of the big, bold, round that was so distinctive to me. I slammed the notebook shut. But when I turned to the window, I saw a figure standing behind the fogged glass. Slender, motionless. I rushed to open the balcony door. It was empty. But the wooden floor was still wet. From then on, I began to see strange things that only I could notice. The bathroom mirror would sometimes fog up, as if someone had breathed on it, even though I had never been in it. The neighbor's cat would howl and scratch at the door every night I dreamed of Nolan. Sometimes, I seemed to see a tiny N appear on the corner of the page of the book I was reading, and then disappear just when I wanted to see it more clearly. My friends and family didn't know anything. They just felt that I wasn't feeling well. The dark circles under my eyes were proof. They told me I needed to rest. But how could I sleep when I could feel Nolan, standing there, staring at me? He was still not there, no matter how hard I tried to remember. And gradually, I gave up hope of ever getting a good look at him. I burned the notebook. As for the paper, I had torn it up long ago. In that moment, I felt liberated. Now I am almost 30, moved to a city. I no longer see Nolan, and it seems that I can calmly talk about him. I also tried to see a psychologist, and from a scientific perspective, the things I see do not seem so scary. According to the doctor, if I think too much about a problem during the day, it will invisibly trigger a part of my memory and reproduce it in my dreams. In addition, The reason he is not there is because my brain cannot process it to create a human face. In general, it is all because I scare myself. I try to believe it. However, since then, I have slept with the light on every night. Don't ask me why.
2. The fifth in the circle. I like to think it was weird because it happened to me when I was so young, not even in high school yet. After all, we were just a bunch of high school kids playing a silly prank in the after-school room at our boarding school. No lights, no cameras, just flashlights and the sound of laughter. That night, we sat in a circle. Me, Alexa, Miriam, and Joe. The four of us put our hands together in the middle, closed our eyes, and started reciting the sentence. If anyone is standing between us, wait for an answer. It was a sentence Alex had found in an old notebook in the school library, which no one believed was true. After all, every school needs a few legends and games to scare the kids. Joe was the most mischievous, and she was the one who pretended to be possessed. As soon as we repeated the spell a third time, it started to twitch slightly, its mouth opening slightly, its eyes wide open until only the whites were visible. I remember Miriam bursting out laughing, throwing a pillow at Joe, and Alexa slapping her thighs with laughter. I laughed too, but there was a part of me that was a little creepy, because for that brief moment, Joe's expression didn't look like she was acting. She didn't say anything. She just breathed heavily and stretched as if she was trying to rise from underwater. No one said anything until she fell back, lying on her back on the floor, motionless for about 3 seconds, then sitting up as if nothing had happened. We all laughed. Joe pretended to be serious, saying, "Someone's got into my head," then laughed, waving her hand. "Just kidding, you guys are so scared." Miriam was the one who videotaped the whole thing on her phone. The next night, we all gathered on Alexa's bed to watch it again. We watched the first part, laughing like we were watching a school comedy again. But then Alexa suddenly stopped. She rewinded, stopped at 42 seconds. In the frame, the four of us were still sitting there, hands touching, eyes closed. But right behind Joe, in the middle of the empty space of the circle, there was a blurry figure, shorter than all of them, standing still. It didn't move. It wasn't clear, but it existed as a dark mass against the dark background, as if covering part of the room. At first, it was still, but very quickly, it swayed slightly even though there was no wind or movement. There was no mistaking it. None of us said anything for almost a minute. Alexa was the first to stand up, pulling the USB out of the computer. She deleted the video right when Miriam was about to protest. Joe just laughed, saying, "It's just a lighting effect, you guys are overdoing it." Then she added, "Throw that crappy phone away, Miriam, the camera is so bad." But in her eyes, I saw something strange. A kind of defensiveness, and a smile more forced than ever. From that day on, Joe changed. She was no longer as optimistic or smiling as before. Gradually, she started to avoid us. She stopped participating in the group chat jokes. She stopped showing up at mealtimes. At first, we thought she was angry about something else, some random love story of kids, you know. But then I tried asking the other guy, but they hadn't been in contact for weeks. Miriam couldn't call. Alexa texted, but it was seen, no response. I went straight to Joe's dorm on Sunday afternoon. Her room was a block away from ours. Joe started school later, and she wasn't in the same room as me, Miriam, and Alexa. The door was locked. I knocked, no one answered. One of the roommates said, "Joe's gone home. Her parents picked her up yesterday." Strangely, none of us heard Joe say anything about going home. And her phone number, it was no longer working. Only once did a message from Joe's account come to my phone. "I don't want you to miss me anymore." When I showed it to Miriam and Alexa, they both went silent. We began to feel watched. Not in an obvious way. It was like a gaze on the back of our heads every time we walked down an empty hallway. A few times as I walked down the hallway connecting two classrooms, I heard small footsteps behind me. When I stopped, the sound stopped. When I turned around, no one was there. But the sound, like a familiar rhythm, repeated itself every day. Miriam said that one time when she was alone in her classroom packing, she heard a chair move behind her. When she turned around, no one was there. But the chair, which was supposed to be against the wall, was almost 5 centimeters away. She didn't say why she was paying so much attention, but I guess we've been paying attention to everything since then. Alexa jumped into my bed one night. Her face was pale. She said someone was sitting on the edge of the bed. The lights were off, but she was sure they were red, even if only for a moment. When she turned them on, there was nothing. The edge of the bed was the same, no warmth. But she was sure. Something was waiting in the dark. We decided to play the clip again. The USB was plugged into the computer, clearly no clip. Alexa breathed a sigh of relief, even though she was the one who deleted it. The file was gone. Miriam had also changed her phone. She had sold her old one to a junk dealer, even though I knew she treasured it. That night, the 3 of us sat in a circle again. This time no one dared to touch it. No one closed their eyes. No one read the call. The air was so quiet you could hear your heart beating. And though no one would admit it, all 3 of us felt it. Something was standing in the corner. Something silent, motionless, but present. I looked around, and when my eyes fell on the empty chair behind Joe that day, I saw a smudge on the seat, like someone had been sitting there for a long time. A faint layer of dust wiped away in a circle, and small palm prints on either side of the edge. There was no explanation for this. I didn't know if Joe had actually acted, or if she was the first one to be recognized, or maybe she had never acted at all. We decided to play the clip again. The USB was plugged into the computer, clearly no clip. Alexa breathed a sigh of relief, even though she was the one who deleted it. The file was gone. Miriam had also changed her phone. She had sold her old one to a junk dealer, even though I knew she treasured it. That night, the 3 of us sat in a circle again. This time no one dared to touch it. No one closed their eyes. No one read the call. The air was so quiet you could hear your heart beating. And though no one would admit it, all 3 of us felt it. Something was standing in the corner. Something silent, motionless, but present. I looked around, and when my eyes fell on the empty chair behind Joe that day, I saw a smudge on the seat, like someone had been sitting there for a long time. A faint layer of dust wiped away in a circle, and small palm prints on either side of the edge. There was no explanation for this. I didn't know if Joe had actually acted, or if she was the first one to be recognized, or maybe she had never acted at all.
3. Teddy Bear Returns. I think there are many people like me who have a special affection for old things. However, I recommend that you keep it safe or give it away, because some of the experiences associated with these things are not very nice. Trust me, I found the teddy bear when I was cleaning out the storage room behind my house. A green plastic box mixed with old toys, worn-out comics, and some greeting cards from my elementary school days. The box was dusty, dented on one side, but still tightly sealed. I didn't expect anything, just wanted to finish cleaning. But when I opened it, there it was, a brown teddy bear, slightly deflated and hairless, with a plaid bow around its neck. I stood still for a moment. The bear looked familiar, but I couldn't remember its name. The more I thought about it, the more strange it seemed. If you haven't figured it out, I have a habit of naming all my toys, from dolls, teddy bears to baby carriages, and even tea sets, accessories. But strangely, I couldn't remember what this teddy bear was called. So I looked closer. A name was written on its tag. Milo, I guess. I'm not sure if it's correct, but the name stuck with me like a vague reminder. And coincidentally, the neighborhood was holding a charity event called Gifts for You. You know what I mean, right? Of course I wouldn't donate anything but electronics or anything too precious. Sorry, I'm poor, and the priority here is me. However, I decided to send some alternative items like the teddy bear. I chuckled and thought to myself that this was a useless game. Who would really need them? Now the strange things began. I had obviously put it in the donation box, but the next morning, it was back. I woke up with something under my head. When I pulled my pillow away, I almost dropped it. Milo. It was right on the bed, right next to my neck. There was an old smell mixed with the smell of dirt and moisture coming from its shaggy fur. The tail was soaked, as if it had just been dug up from somewhere very wet. I was so scared that I almost threw it away and rushed downstairs, asking my mother if she had picked up the bear. She shook her head, looking surprised that I had asked. This was ridiculous. She clearly didn't know I had donated the bear. Even if she had, she wouldn't have come and taken it back. You still have this bear? I thought you gave it away in elementary school. I didn't know what to say. I didn't remember naming it, didn't remember playing with it. But now, it was lying on my bed, and all I knew was that its name was Milo. I was so scared that I couldn't sit still all day. I tried to remember, but the only thing I could think of was that I had written the word Milo on a piece of yellow paper, rolled it up, and stuffed it inside the bear. There was a small tear in the belly seam. Then I put it in a box, sealed it, took it to the back garden, and buried it under an old apple tree. This garden was next to the fence, where I used to play hide and seek when I was little. I tried to remember more, and it seemed like some kind of spiritual game, very popular when I was little. So, I decided to do the same thing, as if completing a childhood ritual that had never had a chance to end. Only this time I took it as far away as I could. When I was done, I went home and prayed that it would never come back. From then on, I started paying more attention. The details seemed small at first, but when I thought about it, it made me feel cold. There was something very strange. Things seemed to have been disturbed, appearing in places where they shouldn't have appeared, not only on tables, shelves, but also in drawers that I clearly remembered locking. Once, I noticed that my favorite doll, Layla, had fallen to the floor. I was sure that I had stood it up, placed it neatly on the shelf. But the next time I saw it, it was upside down, face down on the floor, with its arms behind it as if twisted. I reassured myself that a child must have come in and deliberately destroyed it. There were a lot of children in our area. But the way it lay, it was as if someone really hated it and left it there on purpose. The curtains in the room had a few more small scratches, like someone had scratched them with fingernails, but they were straight, about 15 to 20 centimeters from the floor. I didn't have a pet. The door was still locked, and the curtains were up to my chest. One day, I found a strange stain on the floor, dark, sticky like dried mud, and with a fishy smell. I cleaned it up without thinking much about it. At night, when I entered my room, the smell returned, very faint and only around my sleeping area. I began to feel uncomfortable in my own house. It felt like something was changing little by little. Invisible glances, repetitive sounds, very soft creaks, like small claws scraping across the wooden floor. At night, I found my things facing the door. In the morning, they were facing the other way. No one else had touched them. I started to panic, trying to find relevant details. But no, everything seemed normal. Mom would never tease me like that. And I also locked the door so no other children could come in. But it didn't stop there. It seemed like everything was about that teddy bear. I looked through all my old photos. There was no bear named Milo. There was no picture of me holding or playing with him. Even in my birthday photos, the things around me were unfamiliar. I asked my mother, but she said, "I'm not sure. Maybe I'm remembering wrong." So, why did I remember Milo so clearly? Why did I remember him going to bed with me, watching TV with me, getting wet in the rain once on a trip to the forest? I began to wonder which memories were real. Obviously, at first, I didn't recognize him either. But now the memories were extremely clear, as if someone was stuffing them into my head. The night I set my phone to record a video, I slept very restlessly. Sometimes I felt like the blanket was being pulled lightly. Not a jerk, just a few millimeters. In the morning, the video had been recorded for 8 hours. I fast-forwarded, then stopped at 2:47 a.m. The door, tightly closed, opened slightly. There was no one outside, but the hallway light stopped as a small shadow passed by. No sound, no movement. A round, low, slow shadow that walked in then disappeared under the edge of the bed. I deleted the video, but when I turned on my phone the next day, it was still in my recently watched section. I was scared to death, feeling lucky that the vacation was over, and I could leave without feeling like I was running away. I went back to my apartment downtown. Small, simple, clean. I locked the door carefully. Everything was now back in place, and I could sleep peacefully. But a few days later, when I passed a souvenir shop, there was Milo sitting, legs crossed, head tilted slightly as if he were eavesdropping, and his dark eyes staring straight at me through the glass. I almost lost control, sat down on the spot. I didn't have the courage to go back to where I buried the bear. I don't even remember exactly which tree I buried it under. I don't know what I called back. I'm not sure it was mine, but now it knows where I am, and I think it wants me to remember.
4. The Candle Dream Ritual. I used to be the type of person who was haunted by dreams. Not nightmares, but the feeling of waking up and knowing for sure that there was something in the dream, not quite a dream. It started one day when I was bored and came across an old esoteric forum, a community of half jokes, half crazy, with homemade rituals and modern superstitions. I wasn't going to believe it, but one post made me curious. Encountering the original dream, the title said, a simple ritual for candles placed around the pillow counterclockwise. Before going to sleep, close your eyes and recite exactly one sentence. I want to see myself sleep. I tried it, as I said, not because I believed it, just out of curiosity. Partly because the conditions were very simple and my house was extremely well stocked. If you didn't know, my family owned a small grocery store where you could get everything from food to iron glue. That night, I lit 4 candles, placing in the 4 corners of my pillow. Head, left, foot, right, in that exact counterclockwise order. I blew them out as instructed before lying down, but the smell of wax and smoke lingered. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but I dreamed, and in my dream, I saw myself sleeping. The room was exactly the same as in reality, from the lightly peeling paint near the window to the bedside lamp whose bulb I hadn't changed. But something was wrong. The darkness was thicker. The paintings on the wall were upside down, making the figures in them look like they were crawling upside down on the ceiling. And worst of all, I saw a double of myself standing next to my bed. It didn't do anything. It just stood there. Its eyes were wide open, staring down at my sleeping body. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. The light from the window was just enough to see its shadow and its face. An indistinct expression. Not angry, not happy, not sad, just present. I woke up with a racing heart. The lights in the room were still off. I turned on the nightlight and looked around. The 4 candles were extinguished, as I remembered. I chuckled, scolded myself for letting my imagination run wild. But there was one thing that made me a little surprised. One of the 4 candles, the one at the foot of the pillow, still had a little bit of melted wax, as if it had been extinguished recently. And it was also about a finger's breadth shorter than the others. While the burning time was almost the same, there couldn't have been that much difference. I remember very clearly blowing it out before I lay down. I told my mother this story, of course, in a version that had been edited out of the bullshit. My mother was a very religious woman. She would have spanked me if she had known I was doing this. Play with the devil, as she often said. She laughed and said I must have been dreaming, and forbade me to play with fire again. But that afternoon, when I checked the security camera, the little ones my parents had installed in the store and probably want to check on me when they needed to, I saw something strange. At 3:23 a.m., for about 10 seconds, there was a faint glow from the floor of the bed, right where the 4th candle was. The light flickered, then disappeared. No movement, no shadow, but the light wasn't coming from outside, and I lived on the 3rd floor. There was no way any light could be coming from the floor. I felt a little creepy, but didn't pay much attention. Maybe it was something reflecting light, or the candle I blew out didn't blow out enough, and it flared up again. I was even glad it didn't burn me in the whole room. And man, a few days later, my friend sent me a photo from the small party last week, which I refused to attend. In a group photo, behind the group, reflected in the mirror, was a figure standing, as tall as me, wearing the hoodie I had thrown away last year. I insisted that I wasn't there, but mirrors can't lie. I called my friend to ask. He said the photo was taken right when everyone was calling my name, because it was a pity I didn't come. We even teased him. It would be weird if he showed up and then burst out laughing. I was about to delete the photo, but that night, when I turned on my computer. The photo appeared in the background folder of the screen, even though I hadn't saved it. The file was called Me JPG, a name I never used to save it. I stopped lighting the candles. I put all 4 in the old box, stored in the attic. But every morning I would wake up and find one of them, the 4th candle, sitting neatly on the bedside table, as if it had never been moved. Sometimes I would see a small streak of wax running down the side of my pillow, frozen like dried blood. One night, I woke up with the feeling that someone was watching me. I turned my head toward the mirror. The room was dark, and the only light coming from the hallway was a dim light. But in the mirror, I saw myself not moving. I turned my head away. The strange feeling persisted, as if the shadow in the mirror wasn't moving with me, as if it was waiting for me to turn around. I slowly turned my head. In the mirror, the shadow was walking toward me. One step. Stop. Another step. No sound. No reflection. There was only a blur of movement. I screamed. The light was on. The mirror was empty. The room was empty. Everything was back to normal. But the back of my neck still felt a little cold, and the air still smelled of wax smoke. Something I hadn't touched in days. Most frightening of all, I found myself lying in the same position as in the dream. I didn't tell the whole story, but my parents must have seen that I was having a mental breakdown. But after that, I always had the feeling that someone was following me. Every night, I still dreamed. It was the same room, slightly askew, with the paintings hanging upside down, and the copy I was looking at. And now, the copy didn't just stand. It started walking. 1 step, then 2. Slowly. It didn't blink. It didn't change direction. And when it was an arm's length away, I woke up, always at that exact moment. Always in a cold sweat, always with a single feeling. If it touches me, I will never wake up again. But last night, I did not wake up in time. I opened my eyes in the dark, found myself lying on the bed, but everything was silent. Too silent. No sound of cars, no sound of wind. I turned my head to the mirror. In the mirror, I was still sleeping, but that shadow was no longer reflected. It was not in the mirror. It was behind me. I felt a light breath, not hot, not cold, but heavy as dust. I did not dare to open my eyes again.
If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories.